Over the past weeks, I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft PVP arenas with my viewers on stream, and every now and then we found someone that has barely played the game before or has been dabbling in arenas and dabbling in skirmishes, doing some battlegrounds, but usually sticks to PvE. And there was a lot of stuff we had to get into in order to just get the basics for arenas covered. So I thought it would be great to have one designated video that has all the information you need to get into PvP arenas and cover all the basics, so you can get started right away. There's going to be a huge list because World of Warcraft is a pretty complex game and you have a lot of abilities, a lot of stuff you have to take care of. So I'm going to start off with an overview and then we go over it step by step. I want to keep it concise as possible because I want to do dedicated videos for each topic in the future, so we can go in depth there. But today I'm trying to only cover the basics, so you don't have too much input at the same time.
Hey, why not subscribe to the channel yet? While you're at it, just check out my Twitch channel as well, twitch.tv/Servi, alright? Thanks, buddy.
So the reason we're doing this is we have a way to get more people into World of Warcraft Arena, because the more people that we have, the more people play the game, the easier it's gonna be to find queues, to find teammates, to find people to play with, and you know, the better the game's gonna be. So the target audience would be the person that has maybe played some battlegrounds, played a few arenas, but just very casually, has mostly focused on PvE like raiding or Mythic Plus, or is just generally just trying to get into World of Warcraft PvP and starting the game for the first time with Shadowlands release. So getting into Arena can be super intimidating because there's so much you have to be aware of. There's so much input that you need to parse and so much information for you to parse. So you will you will lose a lot, and that's fine. You just have to fight through. You have to stick with it and you'll improve slowly but surely, and you will find out that the game is just super amazing. Like the first wins will feel super good. So I want to start off with the super basics. I want to go over movement in World of Warcraft, which is basically similar to every other game where you are in a 3D world. You can walk back, walk forwards, strafe left and right, turn around and jump. These are the basic movements. Walking back is really frowned upon, so you want to unbind that key as soon as possible, because walking backwards is like 50% slower than just strafing to the left and right. And you can achieve the same thing just strafing left right while using a camera than walking backwards, but it's not a big deal. But those are the basic movements for the game. There are movement abilities that enhance your movement. There are different types. You have, for instance, gap closers that require a target, which is charge, harpoon, shadow step. These are the things where you can move onto something like a pet or an enemy or a teammate. Then there's repositionings that don't require a target, which is the mage's blink or leap or roll, teleport. Like there are a lot of abilities that reposition your own character without requiring a target. And there's stuff like movement enhanced, which is just giving you more movement speed, like sprint and dash. When you're a melee class, as a basic rule, you want to trade these movement abilities 1-for-1. So you always want to use a movement ability when the enemy uses a movement ability as well, so you can stick to your target or catch up. Otherwise, you'll end up in a situation where you just walk in after someone and can't really hit him, and that feels super frustrating as a melee class. So then let's go to global cooldown, what we call global cooldown. Global cooldown is the time in between two abilities. So you can't just spam abilities one after another or just stack them on top of each other. In between every ability, there's like a 0.5 second to 1 second cooldown that prevents you from casting the next ability. This is called the global cooldown. So there's different abilities that are off the global cooldown or on the global cooldown. Off global cooldown basically just means that you can press the button at the same time as another button that is on the global cooldown. Then spells in general usually have a cast time, unless they're instant. Basically, where you need to be able to see your target without anything in between you and the target. And you only need line of sight when you start the ability and when you finish the ability. The time in between, it doesn't really matter if you have line of sight. Different spells can have different casting schools. A casting school is basically something like nature, shadow, fire, frost. These schools are important because some characters use different schools. For instance, Fire Mage has frost abilities and fire abilities, and there are certain abilities that prevent you from casting certain schools. So you're still able to cast the frost ability when you locked out your fire abilities. Melee abilities also have a global cooldown, but they usually don't have a cast time. You need to be in range to cast or to use your melee abilities though. And range or melee range in World of Warcraft is 5 yards, but you'll figure that out. It's like pretty close range, so you have to stick on your target most of the time. You also need line of sight, so you can't turn your back to someone and attack him, but you'll figure that out soon enough. So let's talk about cooldowns. There's something where you have a difference between offensive and defensive cooldowns. Basically, offensive cooldowns usually give you more damage for a specific amount of time. Like, let's say you gain 30% more damage for the next 20 seconds. That's a pretty basic offensive cooldown. Those have a 3-minute timer where you can't use them. Arena is like a back and forth boxing match where one person is in defensive stance and the other one is in offensive stance, and they trade blows with each other. And these blows are usually considered cooldowns, like an offensive and defensive cooldown. And you have to be able to figure out what you're gonna do to counteract an offensive cooldown. There are different cooldowns. Defensive cooldowns, they're like hard mitigators and soft mitigators as well. Soft mitigator would be something like preventing 30% of damage, incoming damage for the next 30 seconds or 20 or 10. And a hard mitigator would be something to prevent all damage that's been dealt to you in the next 4 or 5 seconds, which is something like Paladin's Bubble, for instance. Also, there's something like peeling, which is using your cooldowns to prevent damage on one of your teammates. And also healers have a way to prevent damage on their teammates. Like they can use cooldowns, defensive cooldowns on their teammates. Crowd control is one of the most important things in the game. It's certain abilities force players to lose control over their character. And they lose control over certain aspects of their character as well, because there are different forms of crowd control. There's like the complete crowd control, which renders you incapable of using anything. You can't move, you can't use your abilities, you can't cast, you can't do anything. There are 2 versions of this as well. One breaks through damage, which is most of the crowd control in World of Warcraft. And there's one that doesn't break through damage, which is stuns. They just lock you in place and render you incapable of using anything. And there's like these crowd controls like charm, fear, incapacitate, sleep. All of these break usually on damage. Some of them break if you reach a certain damage threshold, and others just break by the first damage you take. There's also positional crowd controls, which limits your movability only. You can still cast. And that is like snares and roots, which can slow you down or keep you stuck in place. Some crowd controls that reposition your own character, like a grip, for instance, or a knock. And then the third form is cast crowd control, which limits your character's ability of casting certain spells. There's something like a counter spell or a kick, for instance, which removes a spell school from your character. So you can't cast as a frost mage. You are not able to cast any frost spells when you're getting kicked on frost, but you can still cast everything else that is arcane or fire. Then there's silence, which is basically suppressing all abilities to cast in every school, regardless of what school. And then there's ways of mitigating crowd control. This can be done through healers just removing the effect from you if it is removable. There is some classes that can remove curses. There's classes that can remove certain crowd controls that change your position. And then there's immunities, like your own defensives. You can use a trinket, for instance, to remove one crowd control from your own character. You can use bubble as a paladin to remove everything and make you immune to all incoming effects. Most of characters have some sort of movement impairing mitigator. You can also use abilities preemptively to prevent incoming crowd control. For instance, like Warrior's Blade Storm prevents you from getting crowd control, or there's Greater Fade on the Priest, and also Anti-Magic Shell on the DK, and there's a lot more stuff. Another concept that is important when talking about spell casting is fake casting. So we talked about you being able to interrupt someone that is currently casting a spell. You can do to prevent getting interrupted by someone, you can cast and not finish the cast, but stop before it finishes and bait out the enemy player kicking you. So kicks only work when you use them while the enemy is casting. So it's kind of a game of chicken, who's gonna kick first and who's gonna stop casting. And this is a concept that we'll get into later. It's a rather advanced concept, and it will take you just time to get used to it and figure it out. So with crowd control, there's a concept called Diminishing Returns, which is basically just a way from preventing you being able to crowd control someone indefinitely. A spell becomes less effective the more you use it on the same target. So if I use the same spell, let's say Polymorph for instance, it's gonna be 8 seconds for the first time I cast it on the target. If I cast it a second time, it's only gonna be half duration, which is gonna be 4 seconds. A third time, it's gonna be fourth of the duration, which is 2 seconds. And then the person is gonna be immune for 18 seconds. So combining these concepts, we go on into something called CC chaining, which is using different crowd controls that don't share a same diminishing return to chain them together to have the longest effect of crowd control on one target. For instance, you want to prevent the healer from healing for as long as possible, so you prolong the CC chain on the healer to create as much pressure as you can. For that reason, you have classes that have better synergy with each other than others, and those are usually classes that don't have the same type of crowd control, so they can rotate their crowd controls on the same target and create long CC chains. Some examples of good comps that can do that is a rogue, a mage, and a priest, or a rogue, a mage, and a druid. Line of sight basically just means that you can see the target you're casting or trying to use an ability on, and you can use line of sight to also prevent damage. If you position yourself in a way where the enemy can target you, they basically can't deal any damage. Positioning is very important, but also a very complex topic, but I'm going over the basics here. So a few basics you can keep in mind is your healer needs to be able to heal you at all times. So if you're playing a DPS, make sure that your healer stays in line of sight, or you stay in line of sight of the healer if you expect him to heal you. You need to be able to be in line of sight of your target to actually deal damage, and you need to be able to crowd control the enemy healer or the enemy non-target in order to create pressure. So these are the 3 basic steps. You can also use your positioning to force someone out of position by kiting out or pushing in. You have ways to force someone else to reposition to get, for instance, better possibilities to crowd control him, or better possibilities to force defensive cooldowns or deal damage. There's also something called disengaging, which is a concept where you would try to get out of the fight as much as possible after you've forced some cooldowns, or you're forced to play defensively because the enemy is using cooldown. That's usually where all teammates just pull back, try to run out and get away from the enemy, be out of range or out of line of sight. So one important thing is that you need to know your own class. Like, you need to know your abilities, your talents, like your damage rotation. You need to know what cooldowns you have, how they work, how you use them best optimally together, your crowd controlling capabilities, and what diminishing returns you actually have with other players and other characters. And you will figure these things out through Googling, just watch guides on YouTube. On top of that, if you have figured out your own class, try to figure out every other class. The easiest way to do that is by playing every class, but if you don't have the time, you know, go in front of Ogrima, try to duel people. Whenever you see an ability that you don't know what it does, just try to figure it out. Go on Wowhead and search for it. Try to see what it does. Read through the tooltip. Like whenever you lose to something or a specific class and you're uncertain why you lost or what happened, just read through a guide for that class, and soon enough you'll figure out what their strengths are and their weaknesses. Then we have user interface in general and key bindings. I have a specific video for that goes more into depth already. You can check it out. And the most important parts are, though, you need to see your teammates. You need to be able to see the enemies, like the health bars, the mana bars, cast bars, the buffs and the debuffs. You need to be able to see diminishing returns for them, super important. And also it helps to see what cooldowns they currently have available. You need to be able to target the enemy and target your teammates. You can click, but I'd suggest you use a keybind to target the enemy in arena. You need to target yourself, your party 1, 2, and then you need to target the enemy 1, 2, 3 in arena usually. Figure out some macros that can help you improve on your rotation. Another concept is your focus target. You can basically have 2 targets at the same time. One you're damaging and using your regular abilities on, and then the second target where it can a specific macro. So if you don't want to switch your damage target, you can use a so-called focus macro that will, for instance, cast the crowd control on the focus target without you actually having to change your main target. And last but not least, there's some audio cues and animation cues you can watch out for. So whenever you see an ability that glows up or something makes a weird sound and then you die, you can make sure that that was an offensive ability that you didn't really counter with one of your defenses. So then there's map knowledge, which is not the biggest of deals, but at some point you will find out what are good positionings on certain maps, where can I line aside my enemy, like where can I put my teleport to get the most out of it, and what can I do with the Z-axis? The Z-axis is kind of a pain in this game, so yeah, be aware of that. And then finally, how do you get into the game? The easiest way is to just play maybe Battlegrounds to get your rotation down, just smash some people in the face, and then if you really want to progress and learn, try to find a healer in LFG and just play 2 vs 2. 2 vs 2 with the healer, it slows down the game a lot because someone can heal you, so you don't just die when you lose 100% of your life. And 2v2 also has few cooldowns to track. It's a little simpler, it's a little slower, and you can start by just focusing on one task at a time, you know. Like start off with, okay, today I'm gonna try to crowd control someone perfectly, getting a CC chain off. Now I'm optimizing my damage rotation. Now I'm trying to optimize my offensive cooldowns. I want to use my defensive cooldowns perfectly. I want to track the diminishing returns, track the enemy buffs, just, you know, do one at a time. And eventually you'll figure it out. It takes a lot of games, trust me. You will not become a pro after 100 games, but that's like the same thing with every game, right? So yeah, just keep at it, play the game. Don't be discouraged if someone talks trash. It's just try to stay positive and focus on the progress and the improvement in general. All right, if this was helpful to you, I'd love it if you would leave a subscribe and like the video. Also, if you have further questions, you can jump into the Twitch stream, jump into chat, and find me there. I'm happy to help you out.